at the actual event with leaders. So 3 of these, which one is best? Now, I wouldn't expect you to know the answer, but I'd like you to take a crack at it because we're going to unpack these. And while we're doing that, I want to suggest to you that if you are not using incentive, you're probably leaving money on the table. I'm going to explain to you why. If you're just joining because you're thinking, well, incentive isn't that important to me, it's probably because... Okay. There's no audio. We have audio now. Can we validate that you have audio? And we can restart. We will restart. Can everyone hear me? Somebody just please confirm. Good. All right, let me start over. For those of you that could not hear, take a look at these 3 packages. They are the same content. One is a printed email marketing book. The other is pre-event email marketing training. The third is a sort of online version of that. You can't see that in the numbering system, but take the 3 and tell me which one of these do you think will be best for an incentive. Now, while you're thinking about that, we're going to unlock it in just a few minutes. I want to talk to you about the power of incentive. If you're currently using incentive and it's not having a major impact, you're probably not using the right incentive. If you are not using incentive currently, it may be a key to unlocking treasure in this coming year. Indeed, very few of us understand incentive, how it connects to the value proposition, and particularly to the fulcrum that we so often teach. Now, last week, I taped a banana to this whiteboard. If you didn't see that session, I had a problem with my voice. I was losing it. However, taping that banana to the whiteboard allowed us to talk about perceived value. What happens when you've communicated your value proposition, but you still need some sort of extra push? Incentive can make all the difference. And we're going to talk about a scientific way to apply something unique that we developed in our lab called PVD, Perceived Value Differential. Learning how to calculate PVD could transform your business results. In certain cases, I have seen it unlock a whole new level of conversion performance. I recall working with a company in Italy who has a sort of a European-wide set of retail stores and a strong direct response business. When we got the incentive offer right, it transformed the metrics of the business and led to just a remarkable performance over a period of years. I want to just get deep into the content now. I hope you've picked one of these. I see you've had some thinking. I see Yakov has joined us, and I see Chow and Elad and some others. I'm grateful to have you engaged. Let me take you to the next case study. It's rather interesting. This whole session comes from our graduate program in marketing, and I literally went into my original syllabus and notes, and we carved out a more dense, tighter, specialist version of it just for the YouTube audience. If you'll look here, you'll see 2 forms of incentive. This is an Amazon gift card. Now, I want you to think about this, and someone tell me what is unique about these 2 offers. There's something special that you should notice right away. Do the math and tell me what's unique, because this example was submitted by a student years ago, and they were leveraging an Amazon gift card to drive performance. So as you look at this, can you tell me which one of these offers do you think is best, and also what's unique about this offering? I'm watching right now, and I'm watching your comments. Okay, Susie picks number 2. Elad picks number 1. Someone else, what do you think? Which one's going to produce? I'm going to show you the results from a scientific experiment in just a moment. But first of all, as you're voting, I want to ask another question. Is there anything you see that's unique about this test? Has anyone done the math? So a chance to win one of 20 cards. Do you see this? 20 at $25, and a chance to win one of 10 at $50. What do you think is unique about that? Well, if we have our text right, you'll see that both of these cost the same amount. So you only have a 1 in 10 chance and to win the 50, but you have a 1 in, looks like a chance to win one of 20 at the $25. So, this reminds me of some of Daniel Kahneman's work. Which one do you think has the most value? You should be asking yourself a question, and that is actual value the same? And the answer is yes. Certainly the cost to deliver this incentive is the same, but perceived value is higher. Why? We know from the experiment that one of these offers works better than the other. So Nate says it's number 2. Your chance of winning the $25 card, that's correct, is twice as high, but it's half the amount, Sean, so you are correct. Yakov says 50 is better. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Incentive 2 was 31% better at impacting conversion. Now that should make you think for a moment. It reminds me of the banana and the tape from last week's session. It's surprising that one could tape a banana to the wall of an art museum and sell it for $125,000 or more. But it's also surprising that 30% more people will go for incentive 2 as opposed to 1. There's only going to be 1 winner in a chance of 10. Over there, 1 in 20. You think about that, and let's get deeper into this. Another experiment, test protocol 1009 from our library. If you are new to these lectures, we have the world's largest library of case studies experiments in this type of psychology. We began this work many, many years ago, almost 3 decades ago. We have conducted 20,000 experiments like you're seeing today, and all of this is grounded in that science. But let's go right to the email that we're going to talk about. An online people search company, they're losing orders because of cart abandonment. So we want to recover some of these abandoned carts, and we're going to do it with a carefully written email that leverages incentive. All right, so let's take it apart. Here's the email. This is all a piece of psychology. Hello, we are not sure if you received our previous email. Why do you think it says that? It's connecting you to the previous email. It's giving you a reason for receiving this email. And then in case you're worried about spam, it says, but this is our last attempt to contact you. So now we're implying urgency. If you don't respond to this, there'll be no more opportunity. We're also reminding you that we're not going to pester you or bother you. This is to minimize, any complaints or difficulties with perceived spam. Then we connect personally with their behavior and experience. Several days ago, you, not us, you, we push this in their direction with customer-centric logic. You started to order, and then it has the product name and the website. Somehow, notice this, somehow you weren't able to complete the form. Now you're going to notice something here. The tone of this is not last chance. It's not a sales tone. It's not a hype tone. It's a customer service tone. And that somehow you weren't able to complete the form is an interesting choice of words because it implies that the problem might have been on our end. We're not sure why you didn't complete. This isn't, hey, you didn't complete your order, and if you order today, you'll get X dollars off. It comes as if a concerned customer service rep is trying to help you, and we really are trying to help you, and there's a real value here. Everything in here is sincere, but the tone is very important. Was the problem on our end? Is there any way we can help? Do you see the difference? Do you see the service orientation of this note? There are 2 ways. Now we're going to give them a very direct path to respond by, to complete your order in just 2 minutes or less. Now, why do you think we say 2 minutes or less? That in just 2 minutes or less is a strategic prepositional phrase designed to relieve anxiety, to tell you this is easy and fast. It's not going to be hard to complete your order, and we give them a simple link to get right back to where they left off. Or we give them a toll-free phone number to call. Now, that's the control. And that, by the way, we designed, and it produced a significant increase. It was already the winner in a series of experiments. And look at the PS. PSs are very powerful in email and often overlooked. We use a PS to make a very important point. In this case, because we're concerned about the perception of this note, we stress that If you don't respond, we're going to remove you. This again implies both urgency and also it tells you that we're not going to continue to send notes to you or bother you in any way. That's the control, and the control is powerful. The control recovered many orders. Then came the treatment. Now, I want you to notice that the language is identical except for a change here in this paragraph. So you'll see the first sentence is the same. The second sentence is the same. The third sentence or the third paragraph is almost identical. It's got the primary opening question, is there any way we can help? And then it says something surprising. We apologize. Now, this is a masterful piece of psychology. What we're doing is truly apologizing. It's not made up. Look, if you get into this order and something happened on our end, we're sorry. If you tried to order and you had a technical issue, we're really sorry. We don't want someone to go through that experience. So we say that, and it changes the feeling, the tone, the position of the note. It changes the context. We apologize for any difficulty you may have had with our ordering system, and that apology powers a rationale for the incentive. We need that rationale so that people don't think, I'll just wait in the future for a discounted offer. Our customer service manager has approved a special price of $19.95. This is a savings. I think from memory, the original was $29.95, but I'm saying that from memory. Of $19.95, if you would like to give us one more chance. Do you feel the tone of that? And then right back to laying that mental track, which you need to be doing with your websites. There are 2 ways to complete your order. That's powerful language that helps organize their thinking. And if you don't organize their thinking, then you can't supervise their thinking. And if you can't supervise their thinking, you can't guarantee the outcome. You're moving them towards an inevitable conclusion, one micro-yes at a time. If you've never been on one of these YouTube lectures with us in this program before, stay tuned, because in all of these case studies, we're going to draw up principles that you can apply today to your own business to drive remarkable results. And also, I'm going to share with you a masterful letter written by a young boy. I'm looking for his age, and I'm not sure. It's 8 or 9. You can tell by the handwriting, which we're going to share with you in a little bit. And a slide, you'll see this picture, who starts to understand the whole psychology of marketing in a way instinctively that is superior to many of us. This just happened. It was in the news this past couple of weeks. I'll come back to it in a few minutes. For now, here's your result. Now, I want you to see the power of that number. That's a 263% increase in orders. More than that, it changes the CPA for the business. It means the marketing is far more effective because that additional set of orders occurred without incurring any more marketing cost. You might assign some costs to the sending of the email, but as we all know, that's a pretty low number. And indeed, we didn't spend any more money in the channels. And yet we saw an increase that's 2.6. I mean, it's dramatic. So think about that for just a second. Conversion rate went from 0.19 to 0.69%. All that went through vetting and careful validity analysis by the scientists at MECLABS. So something powerful happened in the mind. The 2 emails looked the same. The difference is a paragraph with an incentive, but that incentive unlocked potential that we could have easily missed. Now, if you think that's interesting, if you like that outcome, if you want to have that outcome in your own business, I want to make a startling statement right now. It's a terrible outcome. You say, wait a second. They saw 263%. Yes, and I'll take that if that's the only way to get it. But the PVD of that, and you're going to learn what PVD is, as I teach today, is 0. You say, what does that mean? Well, when the PVD is 0, you are getting the power of the incentive, but at a high cost. I want to say to you that while this incentive worked and is a good example of proper psychology, it's a bad example of, let's call it, business operating cost or business strategy. When your incentive is a cash discount, it has a PVD of 0. And when your PVD is 0, you're leaving money on the table. So while I am grateful for the win, I want to challenge the win and say there's something still wrong with this approach. And you can unlock that with me as we start to move through an understanding of incentive. Now, for those of you familiar with our methodology, you're going to see on the screen C equals 4M plus 3V plus 2I minus F minus 2A. Indeed, you could move that right bracket to the far right of the A, and it's essentially the same key. We have a positive integer in the incentive and a negative in friction and anxiety. Incentive is your most effective way to counter friction and anxiety when you've done everything you can on the page and you can't do more to reduce it. Remember, you can't eliminate friction. If you eliminate it, you have to eliminate the ask. If you eliminate the ask, you might as well just put a beautiful screensaver on with your brand and give people comfort. You won't make any money, but you won't have any friction. If you're going to have friction, you want the minimal amount. We teach that, how to do that in our courses. Tomorrow I'm getting on a plane and flying to the Royal Bank of Canada, where we're going to be teaching there as we've worked for them for many years. They've applied this in a brilliant way and recently been named the #1 digital bank in North America. You can learn, even if your business is small, from the same principles that I'll be teaching this week there that they've applied to drive enormous results. And they work. These principles work, whether you're in Japan or New Zealand. We tested in those countries with Expedia. They work whether you're in the US or Israel. They work regardless of the language you're working in. Human beings have some common attributes, psychological elements. They're all baked into that heuristic. And you can learn more about that on our websites. We can send you resources to that, but I want you to zero in with me right now on the letter I. If you've done that, I want to teach you 2 or 3 key principles and then get right into something called PVD. Is this making sense? Are you tracking with me? Yakov, you said, what was the difference in profit? Well, here's the point. You can measure that, but the constant that impacts the profit is the dollar associated with a discount. And I'm going to show you how to achieve a discount without achieving the equivalence in cost. And you might be saying, what did he just say? I'm not sure. Hang in there, as I'll unpack it for you going forward. Been doing this 30 years, and really what drives me is helping you understand these principles. I want to understand what happens in the mind. For 30 years, I've been asking a single question. Why do people say yes? Given a set of options, why do they choose one over the other? And with that in mind, one of the factors that impacts that is incentive. Let me show you how it works. Here's my first point in our key pieces. The objective of incentive is to tip the balance of emotional forces from negative to positive. Now, for those of you that have been with us in the past, I'm going to show you a very clear example, and then we're going to unpack it with incentive. But first of all, see this with me. When someone makes a decision that leads to a yes, they're doing a cognitive calculus. I'm going to call this a fulcrum, and I'm going to make this the perceived value on one side and the perceived costs. When you make a decision, you have to determine, even if it's at a subconscious level, is it really worth it? And when you do that, you're essentially totaling up the value you expect to derive from that purchase or that decision, and you are sort of instinctively subtracting what you see to be the total cost. And I don't mean the price. Price may be part of that, but risk is part of that. And it plays itself out in emotional, psychological elements like anxiety or friction. So what you're going to find is there are negative elements on this perceived cost, and you notice the P is larger than the C or the V because perception is everything. We taught that last week. You can get the video. I'm embarrassed by it because I could hardly talk, but the principle is there. That's friction. And also anxiety. These are negatives. And over here is value. And the primary way here is the force of your value proposition. When you get those pieces right, what you want is that fulcrum to tilt down. So I'm going to do an imaginary sort of dotted line here. We want the fulcrum to tip that way. And when that happens, conversion goes up. Marketer, all of conversion-focused marketing is about this. All you can ever do with a page is add, remove, or change to produce this tilting sensation. And there's only two ways in physics to make this happen. You can add value or you can take off cost. Think of these as weights. You can add weight here or you can take off weight here. Now, when you do that, you're able to sort of improve the impact of your message. Now, you may say, well, that seems so complicated and scientific. Well, not for this young boy. I wish I had his age. I don't see it, but I'm going to take you to a slide and show you the natural genius of childhood. So I'm holding actually a note that was shared all over the internet. In fact, some people called it internet hysteria. People were laughing pretty hard about this. A young boy missed the bus. What you're looking at is 2 pages, a note that he left with his mother. I want to read the note because you may not be able to read it. And in the reading of it, I think you'll see that there is a strategy here and that this young boy is deploying the fulcrum. He instinctively understands something that took me 20 years to figure out and a lot of experiments and a lot of science, which tells you something about my lack thereof and the natural genius of childhood. But let me read the note. The cap headline is, I missed the bus. He started with a confession. And I'll read it to you. As your son, I regret to inform you that I've missed my means of public transportation. All right? I know you must be on a roller coaster of emotions right now, but rest assured, I've decided to stay home. This was a tough decision to make while you were gone for 20 minutes, he continues. I'm probably in my bed moping about the fact that I can't go to school. So please don't interrupt me. If you require further assistance, please see the pros cons list. Now we come to the boy's fulcrum. Here it is. Pros. First day home, and I'm trying to read it in his language. I don't have this translated into plain, easy to see text here. First day home this quarter. Grades will be fine. That's a pro. And second pro, today was gonna be a bad one. Can't get over my hair. That's on the left side. On the right, here's the cons. Might become a habit. And then he has in parentheses, doubtful. And then he says, you have to call the school and tell them I've got polio. Another con. Now, if you're laughing, you should be. And this is entertaining. And it appeals to the parent in us. But at the same time, there's a piece of brilliant psychology displayed in this little note. And the fact is, we are making that pros cons list instinctively throughout the day with every single ask for our attention. Even a headline is coming at you with an ask. It's asking for your attention, and you will weigh the pros and cons of giving it your attention based on what you see. It may be the first 3 words of that headline or other elements on the page that make you want to understand that headline. But rest assured, there is a psychological calculus taking place. Now, when you understand this, I want to show you in red the power of incentive, because incentive allows me to put more weight. In addition to the value proposition, I can put an incentive on this side of the fulcrum and suddenly tilt it further down, and for that reason get remarkable results. And if you want to learn how to do that in the most intelligent, I guess that's the best way to put it, the most elegant way, let's call it elegant, then you need to understand something called perceived value differential. But before I get there, let me teach you 2 more key principles. Here's the second. Businesses try incentive, and then it works or it doesn't, and they quit. But that's a mistake. Incentive, virtually, I'm going to make a nearly absolute statement. I, as a philosopher, am afraid of absolute statements, universal statements. They're tricky. But I'm going to make one that's almost absolute in almost every case. Incentive will work. You just need the right incentive. And the way to discover that is to test. So you've got to discover how. And that brings me to a third point. There are three keys. The marketer's intuition, which will appeal to relevance and other key factors. Perceived value differential and return on incentive, which is a financial calculation. And I teach that in my master's level program. What I want you to understand is PVD. You may say, I don't know about all that financial math. You don't need to. PVD, anybody with a 4th grade education, probably a 2nd or 3rd day education, can calculate PVD. And if you understand PVD, you can determine which incentive is likely going to produce the most value for you in your marketing efforts. Are you ready to learn? Does anybody have any questions for me? I'm looking at Timo, who says he's a fanboy from Germany. Timo, we're glad to have you. And I said, you've been following since 2012. How kind of you to be so encouraging. I'm glad you came in. I'm glad that you are part of our community. And really, I want to especially welcome a lot of the people who join us from around the world. I've been discovering people in Israel, in France, in parts of Asia, and in other locations. And I just want you to know that we don't want this to be so American-focused that it isn't relevant to you. Help us make this relevant for you. Ask us questions that apply to your market. Know that we care. In fact, I'll be, either myself or Austin McCraw will be in France in 2 weeks teaching all of this there. And so let's learn together as we go to this next piece. Let's learn how to do perceived value. Now, that requires a simple calculation. We're going to learn PVD, and to do that, I'm going to write on the board, and I want you to understand the basic piece. What does this mean? Well, PVD stands for the difference between what it cost you, net delivered cost, and what it is perceived to be worth or perceived to be the cost. The difference can be leveraged to produce a disproportionate return on your effort. Pareto's law applies here mathematically. When we get an incentive with high PVD, we get a much more valuable economic benefit. So what is PVD exactly in application? How does it apply today to your own website, to your subscription offer, your lead gen forms, or e-commerce? And I want to point out to you all three areas, lead gen, e-commerce, and any type of recurring revenue stream can all benefit from the proper leveraging of incentive. Let's take an example. Let's suppose an incentive costs $5 per unit. Whatever that is you're giving them. It costs $5 per unit. But to them it's worth more. Maybe it's a piece of software. Maybe it's a video series, 3 videos valued at X dollars. So the market puts a price on it of X, but your cost is Y. I'm asking you to do a little Q&A here with me. So there's number 1. So 5 and 49. And then we have another one. It costs 19, but the perceived value is 30. Why is the first one better than the second? Someone tell me. Someone tell me. Why is the first incentive better than the second? It should be intuitive, but to help you, I'm going to go to a little calculation. Well, incentive 1, if you take the $49 perceived value and you subtract the unit cost, well, you are at a PVD of $44. If you take a incentive that's perceived to be $30 worth, in terms of value to your audience, and it costs you 19, your PVD is 11. The higher the PVD, the better the incentive, assuming all other things are equal. Now, where you can get this wrong is in misjudging the perceived value, but that's why we test. With a few smart tests, you can determine, wow, the audience really values this incentive over that incentive, and my PVD here is a little bit lower than that one, but the overall response rate still makes this economically a big win for me. We'll explain that in more detail going forward, but what I need you to understand now is how simple this basic calculation is. Now, while you're thinking about that with me, and I prepare to teach you and share with you some more things, I would like you to think about for just a moment incentive that you might be using on your website. If you're using an incentive on your website, could you share using the chat feature what that incentive is? Just tell me incentive you're either using today or you've used in the past. And I'd like to know if it worked for you or if you liked it or its value, but especially what it is. Just add that into the chat feature and we may discuss it as we go forward. While you're doing that, I want to teach you some key principles about PVD. High PVD is predicated on two things. Now this is going to sound a bit sophisticated because it comes from our graduate program, but it's very simple. Market-driven elements and marketer-driven elements. What's the distinction? Well, a market-driven element is something that is driven externally by the market. You don't control it. It's a part of the marketplace. For instance, the average cost of a hardback book is typically a market-driven element. There's an expected cost for a hardback book between a range of X and Y. Now, on the other hand, a marketer, emphasis on those two letters ER, driven element, is something you can do in your messaging that impacts perceived value. Because all we're trying to do is leverage up the perceived value. Now, I don't think we can do this as good as the artists who got someone to pay $125,000 for a banana and a piece of tape, which is what I taught from last week. If you haven't seen that, go backwards and you can see it on the last YouTube lecture. But I do think that we can create enormous PVD if we're careful and if we think and then if we test. So let's continue. So for market-driven elements, you're seeking items that combine high market value with low delivery costs. Can anybody tell me, since the advent of, let's call a certain business leader who, let's use a man instead of a company. Since the advent of Bill Gates, and we'll go on the other side of that divide, and Steve Jobs, someone tell me one item in the market that has high perceived value but much lower net delivered cost. What kind of item has dominated so many companies in the top 10 technology sectors in the last 20, 30 years? Someone want to take a guess? You want to take a guess? Software. David Carrier nailed it. Software. The reason SaaS businesses and software has become so effective, the reason companies like Microsoft could get away with the mess they've been in the last 20 years while Ballmer was president, is because they had such high PVD, even for their core offer. The net delivered cost of that software is so low compared to what the market will pay for it. And so for this reason, people are seeing huge differences that are being levered up into fortunes, whether you're Salesforce or whether you're Oracle or whether you're Microsoft or Google or some of the younger, newer tech companies that are leveraging the differential. Once you start to see that that differential can be applied to incentive, you find something magical. And I'm going to use the word magic. So, by the way, Sean Hoffman said ebooks. And Sean, can I agree with you and disagree with you? Because it'll help our audience learn. There was a time when an ebook had a higher perceived value than it does today. And in fact, that higher perceived value made an ebook an attractive incentive. Today, we've come to think that it's not so high. And in many cases, what passes for an ebook is a poorly designed lead gen bait and switch offer that is disappointing. And thus, ebooks have gone way down. So have white papers, way down. There was a time, and I took mine off so it wouldn't interfere with teaching, but there was a time when the number one incentive in the country for direct response, this is pre-internet days, was a digital watch. The world thought it was worth $100, $200, $300, but it could be made in Asia cheaply. And I can tell you that for many, many years, the best direct response marketers in the world could not beat a digital watch for driving certain types of behavior as an incentive for their offers. They tried for years and could not beat it. Why? Because the PVD was so high. Now, as you keep that in mind, let's talk about marketer-driven elements. Let's get practical. Let's say right now, you have an incentive on your site. Nate has a $300 bonus offer for opening a new checking account. So what is that? How does that work? How can we connect with that? Nate, I'd be interested in learning more about that because we've done a lot of tests with them. I would say most of the major banks at least in the country and in some other countries, leveraging incentive, and in particular as it relates to checking accounts. But let me just talk about marketer-driven elements, and let's learn. Let's learn 4 ways you can drive up the perceived value. It's amazing to me because all 4 of these are simple. Certainly the first one, possibly the second one, are so easy to execute, and yet we don't. And we're surprised that our incentive isn't pulling what we expected that it should. Now, I have a magazine called Golf Digest. I remember when the Golf Channel began, and I was running my research lab, and they were based in Orlando, and I headed to Orlando to meet the CEO and talk about their plans, to talk about what they were going to do going in the future. It was just a friendly conversation between leaders thinking about, the impact of broadcast, cable, golf. Here's Golf Digest. So think about an offer that's structured this way. A free set of 15 golf balls. Now, as you think about Golf Digest and not this, bear in mind that the master of incentive in the media, multimedia, particularly magazine business, has been Sports Illustrated. For many years, they sold a blooper tape that came with the subscription. They advertised the blooper tape on TV, and people wanted that blooper tape, and it drove subscriptions. They came up with another superior way that is integrated completely into their model. And right or wrong, whether you like it or not, whether you approve of it morally or not, it's clearly driven enormous value for them. Can anybody think of what that new incentive is that they sell with a subscription that drives so much of their revenue? They're leveraging PVD. If you don't know what it is, I'll share it with you. It's the swimsuit edition. I'm probably going to make somebody mad at me, but basically, it's they legitimize soft porn. You might not get caught holding a hardcore porn magazine in your hand at home, but holding a Sports Illustrated is perceived to be okay. The closer they come to that other line, the more PVD they drive. And boy, they've come as close as they can. I'm not commenting on ethics here. I'm commenting on strategy, but it worked. It's worked in spades. High PVD. Now, let's go back to this more modest attempt, 15 golf balls. I want you to notice the first way, it's right there numbered up, the name and description. Never underestimate the power of a name. Aristotle saw this, and philosopher after philosopher has seen that a name itself influences your conclusion about something or someone. Name it right and describe it well. We do such a terrible job of this with our incentives. In this case, look at the difference. A free box of 15, these are now specialists. You can see this, that's a well-known name in golf. And I think you pronounce it Titleist. Somebody tell me, I don't know. I'm not a golfer pro, but I've taught this illustration many times. And VX1 golf balls, they're very specific. The image is different. All of it is designed to intensify your perceived value of this incentive. So this is getting the name and description right. Don't tell me it's a free white paper. Don't tell me it's a free ebook. Give me a very detailed, powerful, high appeal name with a compelling description. And you'll see perceived value goes up. Here's another way. Packaging. Not this, but look at this new one. But this. Packaging was taken to a new art form by the late Steve Jobs. And we are all still copying what he did to drive up perceived value. And we all know the margins at Apple are staggering. They generate more retail dollars per square foot than any business in the, I was going to say the universe, but it's certainly on planet Earth. And they generate enormous margin. And packaging is a key. Do not neglect packaging to drive up perceived value. And if you've got good packaging, don't wait till it's sent in the mail. Let them see it in the visuals. Don't even just use one picture. Sometimes a collage that shows the picture, the primary item, its use, the packaging. Really use your imagery to do the description and then add to it a caption, which makes it even more powerful. Now, availability is a bit confusing. What do you mean by that? Well, not this, a free box of 15, but this. A free set of golf balls from the 2014 Masters Reserve Supply. Do you see the difference? Only 200 sets in existence. Do you see how that parenthetical drives up the value? By availability, I'm referring to exclusivity. I'm saying that the limited number produces a higher perceived value. Same way it did with a banana and a piece of tape. Again, back to last week. So, not this, but this. So now we've seen three ways. Let's touch the fourth. Proximity to authority. A box set of the golf balls, Rory, is it McIlroy, prefers to use. See the difference? By connecting the balls to this high authority, you increase perceived value yet again. Now, all of this is just designed to get you to think about 4 ways. Let's go back over them. 4 ways you can improve the perceived value of any incentive that you happen to use in your organization. Name and description, packaging, and along with packaging, availability, and along with availability, authority, proximity to authority. Get that item near that authority and drive up its value. Now, as you think about this, I want to walk through sort of the climactic piece here. I have a case study that I think will interest you, but I want to first of all show you how to calculate the answer to the question I began this lecture with. So, we asked which one of these? Now, Austin Spence is right beside me. I see printed email book, pre-event email marketing training, and pre-event email marketing training. I'll bet when you prepared my slides, you duplicated those number 2 and number 3. I think that's what happened because he customized the slides from my graduate training just for you today. And I'd like to formally and officially blame Austin for anything that goes wrong in this. And I'm just kidding, of course. Austin helps me. And for those of you that wonder about Paul and I were talking today, he has continued to achieve success with his business on the side. And I think it's going to grow more and more as Paul is applying what he's learning here into that business and, of course, learning more and teaching me. Austin, on the other hand, is still determining how he's going to leverage this. But I will do this for those of you that don't know him. Austin, come over here for a second. This is not planned. My executive producer probably doesn't like this. I don't appreciate the fact that Austin's so tall that I don't know if his head will fit in the screen compared to me, and I'm like 6'5". Not really. But this is Austin, and he works on all this content in preparation, and I appreciate your hard work, buddy. And you'll see him. He's been working with us for how long now, Austin?
Since
June. That's not a real beard, by the way. That's just one of those stick-on beards. And if you may want to rank his beard. That might be an appropriate way to spend our time. Shall we figure out which one of these works best? So let's first of all define what they are. One is an ebook, and the other is actually like an online training program, and the third is an on-site training session that happens at the event. So you got 3 of these. I think that's how they've done. But let's just look at it. So first of all, what is the PVD for the first one? We're going to compare them. And as you walk through this, perhaps we'll be able to take the day and make it more practical for you. That's the idea. It's not that you should say, oh, I know from watching this, I should use an ebook. No, I'm simply showing you how to compare. And so let's look at this. If the estimated perceived value is 450, and it was, by the way, because in this instance, this is for one of our email summits, we had a research report that people paid that much money for. So we know that the perceived value really was 450. Otherwise, that would be ridiculous. But it was in this case. And the net delivered cost, our hard cost for every copy of this very thick report, was $30. So we simply do a simple calculation, VP, and you can see it, minus net delivered cost. And that gives us a number, 420. Remember that, we'll come back to it. Now let's look at this. Perceived value, 400. Again, we had a benchmark for this. We had courses that were selling for that. And the net delivered cost, $1. What's the difference? $3.99. Now, let's look at running this event. In the event, the perceived value was $500 and the net delivered cost, $275, because it cost a lot more to physically conduct the event. So now we have a PVD of $225. Can everyone start to follow the logic? Is this helping you? Is this making sense? By the way, Tim, you mentioned 450 really. We actually had people spend thousands of dollars in some reports. Some reports cost over $100,000. Believe it or not, and people paid that. So for us, like Forrester or someone, these reports were high value because of the amount of science and research engaged. By the way, all of that we're trying to give you free. I don't even sell reports anymore. I just teach it all. And if you'll learn it, you can apply it. Our mission is to discover so that we can grow in our understanding. And then I want to teach so you can grow in your understanding. And I'm not measuring my life by how much money I put away, how many employees we have, or what competitor I take out. The empire I want is in the mind. Let's keep learning. Let's now compare these. There you go. So, audience, just to prove that you're following me, and we're almost done, which one of these looks like it might be best? Which one of these looks like it might be best? Sean Hoffman makes a point. Isn't the audience jaded to the marketer's perceived value? And he says, I always feel it's overinflated. Yes, you're working against the snake oil. I taught with snake oil, real snake oil, over 100 years old, here, showing you how the markets become jaded. But Sean, you have to overcome that using the techniques that we teach here. And we overcome it every day and see enormous gains by applying it properly. And so you can overcome that, but you start with a skeptical, jaded audience. That's why I'm so harsh when I do live op, because that's the mindset of the audience. It's a good question. Now, with these three, did you tell me which one's best? 1, 2, or 3? Somebody go ahead and look at this. Which one is the best incentive according to this little illustration? Just from a hypothetical standpoint, can you use your chat feature and tell me, is it 1, 2, or 3? So 1 is the ebook, 2 is the online course, and 3 is the physical class. Okay, David nailed it. David said it's right. David gets an A because David said it first. I don't know if you know this, but the first person to answer this question gets an entire website built free for them by Austin Spence, and in his spare time, late at night. It may take a while, but it's going to be really good when he's done. So Elad says 1 and Sean says 1. Yes, that's correct. 1 is their answer. Now, is that answer for sure? Not until you test. You don't know for... This is how I start to create hypotheses for testing. Don't get challenged when I say this next, but having done this work before, I know that I go to a process that you see here. I'm not going to explain it. I compare actual demand to determine the true perceived value, and then we do a return on incentive, meaning just the ROI calculation of the additional cost, that it would be your net delivered cost. If the last paragraph confuse you, it's just for the more experienced marketers who have sophisticated financial instruments measuring their incentive. I want you to know that there is more, but I can't get into that in any more depth than I already have. So let's see all of this come together. The final case study. Here you have a test protocol, looks like 11,100 from our library. Computer certification exam prep company. They started losing customers after they changed their business model. They wanted to find a way to recover people they were losing. They wanted to use incentive to try and get them back. Let's see what we did. So, as a way to re-engage potentially frustrated customers, they offered a simple 30% off incentive for an upgrade version. So if you didn't want to stay with them, you could get this offering with a 30% savings. Everyone following that? That's the control. Let's look at the treatment. There's more than one, so track with me. I'm probably 3 slides away from showing you the outcome, pulling this all together. So just bear with me, we're almost there. All right, so we value your loyalty as a customer. To make up for any frustration by our new pricing structure, we'd like to give you back the value of the $29.99 you spent on the original. Do you see what's going on here? They're using that same strategy that we implemented in the first example. It's customer service driven. It's humble. It admits a mistake. It offers to help. It's a different tone and approach than we see in all that classic marketing BS. And it's just the kindness preventing me from getting more descriptive. I despise it. But that BS is not here. And in this case, we're saying, look, if you weren't satisfied with the first offering, let's cover the cost of that if you decide to upgrade to the next. So that's one approach. Now, you may want to figure out what PVD there is, but you can pretty much see it's going to be 0 because the discount is equivalent exactly to the amount of money it's costing you to give it. Let's go to B. In this treatment, we attempt to increase the perceived value of the discount by extending it across 3 months and pointing out what that's worth over 3 months. It's the same offer, but over 3 months, it's worth $90. Do you see what's going on here? Can anybody see there's a banana and a piece of tape going onto a whiteboard here? If you don't know what I mean, connect with previous teaching. I'm saying that we're using context, a 3-month period, to change your perception of the total value. The value is higher than this. Over 12 months, it's much higher. But we use that 3-month window based on our study of the data. So now we're talking about the same discount, and we're telling the truth in all three. But we're telling the truth in different ways. I'd like to say that again. I am always 100% against you fudging the truth in any way. I despise that kind of marketing. It's why our job is so hard. But there are more than one way. There are more than one ways. There is more than one way to tell a story. And in a sense, each of these represent a story, a very short, tight narrative. We're telling the truth with all three stories, but one story is more powerful than the others. Now, in fairness, even a 5% improvement would be a dramatic benefit because we're talking about found money. This is money you already sort of invested to get them to this point. And so anything you recover now is having a real impact on margin and the bottom line. But there's the control, there's A, there's B. Audience, vote. Which one? C, A, or B? C will be control. Just put down C if you mean control. A or B? Which one's going to win? Hi, Leon. Good to have you here. Is it A or is it B? Or is it C? Are you ready? I'm listening for your vote. I don't see him yet. I'm just going to stand here and stare at the camera. I'm about to break out into an expressive dance. Oh, here they come. Yakov says B. Nick says B. Nate says B. Okay, keep going. I've only got 3 votes. I don't think that's sufficient. I'm going to keep pestering you. Somebody else vote. Which one? A, B, or C? David says C. Interesting, David. And Fogel says, I want to see the expressive dance. David, I'll have to think about what it would take to get me to do a true marketing experiments / MECLABS expressive dance. We'll think about that. Silliman, good to see you back. B seems more earnest. He even gave us a reason. Chris Borink says A. If I pronounced your name right, Chris. Would you like to see the result? Okay, here we go. Team, it was A by a 283% difference. Verified and validated with our sciences group. Isn't that stunning? Now, most of you didn't pick A. Chris did. Chris will be teaching the class next week. Congratulations, Chris. I'll just leave everything ready for you. You can just pick up and go. In the meantime, for those of you that didn't get A, you're in good company. I would have probably picked B as my best guess. I can call a test when it's in sort of a certain zone, but when it gets to what I call the testing zone, I don't know if it's going to be A or B or C because the complexity increases. I believe that you can use common sense to get to the testing zone because you can't test everything. But once you get in the testing zone, you're about to be humbled. Because if you know every time, then you're not building good treatments. You're not creating good hypotheses. And I can tell you right now, I would have probably chosen the wrong one here because A beat B. And the moral of that story, which you've heard if you've been in my training before, is there are no expert marketers. There are only experienced marketers and expert testers. And these experts at testing, they learn that there comes a place in the mystery of the human mind where the only way you're going to know is not to ask your other marketing team. It's not to ask your boss. And hear me now, this is going to surprise you. And it's not to ask the customer. You say, wait a second. Listen, the customer is terrible at predicting their own behavior. There are questions you can ask the customer. The best question to ask the customer begins with why. Why didn't you click here? Why did you avoid that? Why did you say no here? Or why did you say yes? Or why did you renew? Those are full of insights and they help us build hypotheses. When you ask a customer, what price would you pay? Would you be willing to pay X, Y, or Z? You're about to go down the rabbit hole. What I found is the only way to answer a question like the one we raised in this experiment is to measure behavior. And when you combine that with the power of PVD, a great testing program, and a smart set of hypotheses around potential incentives, you can take your business to a whole new level. You can reduce your CPA, increase your margin, drive more top line, transform your results. I'm out of time. I want to thank you for today. Was it helpful for you? We got into a lot of depth, more slides, because I had a lot I wanted to do in a short period of time. Can I get some feedback from you here using the chat? I think that'll help us a lot. I want to read your comments, every one of them, and calibrate. Also, I want to invite you to introduce a topic you'd like to hear more on. Use this chat feature today to say, hey, at some point in the future, can you teach us about X or Y or Z? We want you to help generate our content. And we've got more coming, a lot more coming that we've been preparing for you. We're likely going to be increasing frequency with some special vertical training for you. More to come on that in the future. In the meantime, I want to thank you for your trust. Like this if it was good for you. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Share with a friend and join me on Instagram and LinkedIn so you can see some of the daily updates and things that are going on around here. We're grateful and we'll catch you again next week. Thank you.